All right, so it's 9:30. I think we've got a good deal of folks here. Couple of ground rules for the media availability today. If you are not speaking, we ask that you keep your camera off. That'll help with the image, particularly for those of our friends in the TV space. KATU, it looks like you're not muted. If you wouldn't mind muting yourself. And if everyone else could please remain on mute unless they are speaking, that'll help us keep our sound quality tight. My name is Ben Morris. I'm the communications director here at the Secretary of State's office. I'm going to jump off camera here and introduce Secretary Fagan, who is our first speaker today. So thanks, everyone. We'll be happy to stick around for as long as we can to take all of your questions at the end. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Shemia Fagan, and I use she, her pronouns, and I am honored to serve you as Oregon's 28th Secretary of State. I've talked a lot throughout the last 10 years of public service about what education did in my life as a kid growing up poor, raised by a single parent in Eastern Oregon, that my mom battled addiction, and that a teacher at Duffer School taught me to play chess and invited me to join an after-school program, which led me to the Oregon State Chess Tournament back in Portland, and I was able to win the Oregon Scholastic Chess Champion as a fourth grader. And I remember watching my brothers hoist my trophy over their heads and yelling, "My sister's the chess champion!" And for the first time as a fourth grader, I knew that it didn't matter that I didn't have everything that other kids had in their lives, that I was going to be able to compete. And education and educators really helped pull me out of poverty. And that is one of the reasons that for the past decade in public service, I've been committed to doing everything we can to provide opportunities to the same opportunities I received to today's Oregon students. And that means opportunities for all students. And that means specific policies to support students of color. Look, my journey out of poverty wasn't easy, but my journey was not made harder by systemic barriers because of the color of my skin. But we know from the 2019 audit of the Portland Public Schools that the opportunities I received are not equally shared with Black and Latinx students. We need to change that. First, I want to acknowledge just how hard the pandemic has been on everyone in education. Teachers have had incredibly unique challenges and shifts in their work. And as a single mom to a public school student, I know personally that students and families have had unique and faced unique challenges and changes to every aspect of their day-to-day experience of learning. School administrators have had unique challenges and been asked to manage through so much uncertainty. Even still, these challenges have fallen disproportionately on students of color. When this agency audited Portland Public Schools in 2019 under my predecessor, the late Secretary Dennis Richardson, the audit found that our largest school district lagged behind other districts in support for Black and Latinx and economically disadvantaged students. Those problems persist today, and this is a call to action. Despite high principal turnover, the district is not yet detailing or publicly discussing turnover, teacher experience, or initiative overload at high poverty schools, all key issues, equity issues that the district needs to address. The COVID-19 pandemic has posed significant challenges for PPS and other districts. These challenges delayed the district's ability to act on some of our recommendations. But when you talk to students and parents, they'll remind you that you only get one chance to be a fifth grader. You only get one chance in high school. And unfortunately, we only get one chance to help the students who are served by our schools today. I'm grateful to the Portland Public School District for the work it has done toward improving outcome for students of color. In particular, the district's efforts to improve support for high poverty schools is commendable. They've added training, student and family support, and staff such as counselors and assistant principals. The district's prioritization of racial equity is important, and must be highlighted. And because of the district's priority for racial equity, the district should take immediate steps to implement the remaining recommendations of this audit. I only got one shot to see a path out of my family's poverty, and that is true for so many students in Oregon today. Despite the very real and understandable challenges facing schools today, we all must do better for Oregon kids right now. Thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to our audits director, Kip Memmott.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Secretary Fagan, for those moving words and support of our audit. I want to introduce myself. I'm Kip Memmott. I'm the Audits Director for the Secretary of State's Audits Division. My pronouns are he and his. I want to get right to your questions, but just a couple of comments. First of all, thanking Portland Public School District for their cooperation during the audit a few years back and during the follow-up. As the Secretary just noted, the devastating impacts of pandemic on education are real and palatable. And we understand that and recognize that strongly in this follow-up work. I also want to recognize our audit team who did both the original audit and then the follow-up work, and they'll be here on hand today to answer your questions, and please proffer those here in a minute. The audit team is Andrew Love is the audit manager. Andrew, go ahead and come on up. And then Scott Learn was the lead auditor on this work as well. We're going to get right to your questions. I just want to end my brief comments by thanking you, members of the media. Again, without your help putting our work out there to both from the assurance and the need to improvement in government, we'd be missing a key partnership. So we thank you for your interest here too. Having said that, I'll turn it over back to Ben to get in to facilitate the question and answer session.
Thank you, Kip. Thank you, Secretary Fagan. So for questions, you could either raise your hand in the Microsoft Teams function or drop them in the chat, and we'll just go in the order that they're received. So first up, we have Christine. Christine, go ahead.
Hi, thanks so much for being here this morning, giving us this update. I'm Christine Pitawanich with KGW News, and as I understand it, since 2019, PPS, as I saw in the press release, has fully implemented only 2 of the original audit's 15 recommendations. And I was just wondering, how long does the district have to implement all of them? And is there a timeline? Are there consequences if all the recommendations aren't implemented in a timely manner?
You're muted, Andrew.
For that, this is Andrew Love, the audit manager. Typically, we try to follow up on our audits a year out from the date. This one, we gave a little bit more extra time due to the pandemic and then the back and forth between the agency to get the evidence. There isn't really a tight deadline on recommendations. Some of these recommendations are big picture recommendations. Some are minor things that they can change as soon as they can. The challenge here with an audit, we don't have any authority to force implementation. We make recommendations. It's up to the management of the district to implement and the board to implement.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Next hand I see is Courtney Vaughn.
Hi, thank you. This is Courtney Vaughn with the Portland Tribune newspaper. Could you speak a little bit about what kicked off the 2019 audit? Why did the state decide to take a look at PPS in particular at that time?
I'll go ahead and field that one. That's a great question. The education was a high priority for Secretary Richardson, as it is for Secretary Fagan as well. I think at that time, he was very interested in both equity issues and issues of financial spending. A big part of the audit obviously focused on budgeting and fiscal practices of the district. And I think that was just a priority of his administration, that which aligned well with the audits division history of conducting education audits. And so I think it was just a high priority for him as the elected Secretary of State. That is one of the responsibilities they have, is to help direct our audit resources. And so I think that was just a priority, and obviously public education in our biggest district in the state. I think all the parents out there in the community would agree it's a very worthy topic for audit. But thank you for that good question.
Thank you, Kip. Next up, I have Betsy Hammond.
Thanks for your patience with unmuting. My question is about the I was surprised to find, I think there were at least 9 references in the audit saying essentially the district said they have taken this step or have done this thing that responds to our recommendations, but they didn't provide us with evidence, or whatever they provided us didn't speak to, may have spoken to how many hours people were served, for example, but not whether it was effective, that kind of thing. I wasn't familiar with that in your work, but I wasn't sure if that's because I have read a lot more audits than follow-up reports, or if that is in fact atypical for a follow-up report and maybe related to the pandemic or the changing of leadership chairs at PPS. If you could just help me understand, because it wasn't 1 or 2 isolated instances, it was repeatedly stated that, the district leaders say, hey, we've taken care of this, and yet they did not provide the evidence.
Scott or Andrew, did you want to take first bite? And I could follow up with some comments if you don't hit the ones I have in mind.
Our audit process for follow-ups usually entails us requesting where they are on their status and then providing evidence. So typically, the auditee provides as much evidence as they can find to support, and it's our role to make a determination on whether that evidence supports those recommendations. So generally, we find that there are, several recommendations that haven't been fully implemented based on the evidence, but to the degree that we found it in this district, it was pretty high. And to reference a previous report we recently released, I believe in September, a follow-up on ODE, and they had similar issues. Education is a challenging field, and a lot of the recommendations we have, like I mentioned before, are big picture, long-term recommendations. So implementation is difficult, but it was concerning to us, the number of partially or not implemented recommendations.
A quick follow-up, if you don't mind. When you said the audit team usually would provide that evidence, are you referring to a team within PPS or a team within your division?
I'm sorry, I misspoke or used some jargon. Audit agency is what we meant. I originally said auditee, which is what we call the audited agency. So that would have been PPS, for clarification.
And just to add one other fine point on that, because it's a really great question, we do, evidence, we want to lean in. One of the weakest forms of evidence, without getting too wonky right now here, is interview data and what people say. And so we wanted to lean in. We don't invest as much time in these follow-up reports, to be honest, as a full audit. They don't adhere to the same standards, and they're still high quality and have all the evidence that we need to support our statements. But we can't, when there's areas of disagreement, we wanted to cite what they said and put that in record. But what you can take away from those statements is we don't have evidence outside of statements that those things are moving forward, and therefore we have to raise the doubt and can't really measure. And that was a big factor in our determination of implementation status. And so we're not saying we doubt their word, but auditors, obviously, we need more than what people tell us. We need documents and analysis and studies and those kind of things. And in those areas, despite a couple of requests to be provided with that, we were not provided with that information.
Okay, thank you, Kip and Andrew. I don't have any additional hands, and I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat. So for folks who have already spoken up, does anyone have a follow-up question, or would anyone you like to jump in?
I assume if we do have additional follow-up questions in the ensuing hours, that Ben, you're our best point of contact, and that you would get us answers today, recognizing we're all on deadline.
Absolutely, that's right.
Terrific, thank you.
Thank you. I'm also seeing a new hand from Courtney.
Hi, yes, just a follow-up question. I know the 2019 audit focused on Portland Public Schools. Are there any other school districts in Oregon that the state is likely to look at for the same issues? And was the PPS audit, I mean, did the state focus particularly on PPS because of its size, because of it, it being the largest district?
Yeah, I'll answer that. Yes, to your second question is yes, that was the reason. The largest district, a common risk assessment method is go where the most risk is, which is often sized budget and number of students. And it's a great question about future work in districts. Obviously, as you heard the Secretary, we're committed to educational audits. We're doing work in education right now. We will always be doing work in education. But to our specific future plans about districts, that's something we'll have to get back to you on. We just issued our 2022-23 audit plan. We have no district work scheduled specifically in that plan, but we're just getting going here under Secretary Fagan. So we'll be transparent about where we go in the future with districts. But right now, to answer as clear as I can, we do not have any work planned in any other school districts.
Thank you, Kip. All right, I'm not seeing any additional questions at this time, but I want to just pause for a second in case anyone has a last minute thought. Okay, Betsy, I see your hand is up. Is that still a hangover from the previous question, or do you have?
Yes, it's me needing practice and figuring out how to unraise my hand.
Not a problem at all.
With all the kids who don't know how to go back to regular school, I don't know how to. Sorry, I apologize.
Oh, you're fine. Don't worry about it. We just wanted to check to make sure. Oh, I am seeing a new hand from Christine. Let's go back to Christine.
Yeah, and this is more of a logistical question. Just curious when you might have the recording available, Ben, just so I know about how long, to wait.
Absolutely. Usually takes about 15 minutes to process, and I'll cut out the beginning and any kind of like lag at the end. So let's say half an hour to 45 minutes.
Perfect. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay, thanks everybody. I think everyone has my email address for any follow-up questions. And we appreciate your time. Thank you very much, Secretary Fagan. Thank you to the audits team. Hope everyone has a great day.